Welcome to Create, Build, Manage, the Entrepreneur's Toolbox.
Welcome to Create, Build, Manage on BizTV. I'm Kelli Phillips. Today, Gareth Keown is with me from the Midwest Food Bank, the largest independent food bank in America. Gareth will tell us all about food insecurity and how it impacts all of us. Stick around. We'll be right back with more Create, Build, Manage. With more than 23 years of executive experience, he's led projects in over 100 countries and consulted for around only 330 nonprofits. Currently, he's focused on addressing food supply chain challenges in Texas and even beyond. Please welcome Gareth Keown. Keown. I even had that down too. The executive director of the Midwest Food Bank. So tell us a little bit about your background before we get into what you're doing now.
Well, thanks, Kelli. That's quite the intro. So I was born and raised in South Africa because obviously this accent didn't pass
Texas.
I was going to say Louisiana, but the Cajun accent sometimes there. So born and raised in South Africa. I left there in 97, moved to the Middle East and was predominantly in global operations, global missions. And then in 2002, came to the States. In fact, back in 2001, 2002, unbeknownst to me, I'd actually met my wife in Jerusalem. And so 2002, we reconnected and the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah.
Yeah, so not quite straight lines, asymmetric in some ways, but that's life sometimes.
Hey, when you look back and you connect the dots, it all makes sense.
It does.
Is it true you grew up on a farm?
Yes, it is. So originally a cattle farm, and then as the economy changed, we converted that into a guest farm or a retreat center, and so predominantly that has been my existence.
So always in the food industry, so to speak?
Somewhat. I find myself in the food industry today, and I can connect the dots back to the point of origin. But that's been a surprise for me that I find myself back in this vertical.
Yeah. So tell us about Midwest Food Bank and what it is and what exactly y'all do.
Sure. So Midwest is the largest food bank in America. It's an independent, faith-based organization. They originally founded in 2003 in Bloomington, Illinois. 3 farmers had a bumper crop, and they simply responded to what seemed to be an insignificant response of what are you going to do with the excess or the blessing. And so the local community was in need, and so what started as a simple yes has now grown into, again, one of the largest food banks in America. So today we're in 10 locations throughout the country and 2 international.
And tell us the difference between what a food bank is and a food pantry.
That's a great question. So think of it as Costco versus your corner store.
Okay.
And when you think about food pantries or food closets, they're the front lines.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the individuals that are staying up late and caring for their communities and doing incredibly hard work. But where do they get their food from? And so there's various food sources and supply chains on that, and food banks are one of them. And so we are a food bank that provides food pantries in the DFW area and the other states.
So you said it's the largest in the country. How many different pantries do you help facilitate?
So at a national level, it's over 2,400 food pantries. And at a statewide, we're running about 106 in Texas. I wish I could say everything is bigger and better in Texas, but we're one of the babies.
In Texas.
Yep. So we're working hard to serve our community, and we're growing.
Talk a little bit about food insecurity, because I know there is a lot of food insecurity out there, but some people that may have abundance of food may know nothing about this.
Yeah. So food insecurity is a very complex and nuance element. And so if I was to really break it down let's start with what the definition of food insecurity is.
Mm-hmm.
Food insecurity in its most basic form is simply not having the sufficient access of quality and quantity of food per day to live a healthy lifestyle. Now, if I was to add color to that, that would be the thousands of kids in our school districts that, for them, their only meal for the day is that cafeteria meal. Or it might be the single mom, single parent that's got a job that just can't make ends meet. Or it might be the single senior citizen that has now a fixed income, soaring inflation and food costs. Mm-hmm. Or it might be the veterans in our community, more than 5%. If we go back further into at a state level, roughly 16% of our population in the state of Texas is food insecure by that original definition. And so unfortunately, what that makes us as the state is the most food insecure state in the nation.
And you wouldn't think that, being Texas. I mean, you think of all of the farms and the mom and pops that put the food on the table, but you've got lots of areas that just don't have access to it.
Yeah, we're the second largest GDP in the nation. In fact, if you look at it at a global sense, maybe 8th or 9th, and yet we are known for this issue.
So how do you work specifically to solve food insecurity?
Yeah, so again, it's a complex problem, and it takes multiple stakeholders working together to provide a sustainable solution. So specifically for us, the three primary ways that we address food insecurity is through our model, our strategic food pantry network, and creating awareness. So when we talk about our model is really just connecting resources to the need. When you look at food supply production in the US, roughly 1/3 of all food goes to waste. Mm. And so that's for various reasons. Sometimes it's just supply chain inefficiencies and such. And because of our scale, we're able to rescue food. Whereas food that might have been coming up to date, best by dates, some vendors have 120 days or 180 days. There might be food that's still in the warehouse that it's at 90 days. And that vendor is not going to receive that food. And for us, we're able to then leverage our position and rescue that food through donations. So that leads us to the second component of how we fight food insecurity, and that is our strategic partnerships with pantries. We're only as good as our ability to design, develop, and deploy food pantries that are geographically relevant, meaning addressing food insecure areas, food deserts, by program, because we know that one program doesn't fit all, and by demographics. And then lastly, by creating awareness. You said it yourself, Kelly, that when we think about food insecurity and we think about Texas, those are two things that we don't necessarily tie together.
No, not
And so just by bringing that awareness to know that we are a state that is food insecure, we do have the resources, and it's about how do we leverage our resources that we have and bring them to the table in a smart way.
So how can people help?
I would say time, talent, and treasure. Keep it simple like that. So when you think about time, our model, we rely heavily on volunteers. Roughly 36,000 volunteers per year help us do what we do. Those are forklift drivers, those are packers, those are individuals that are just helping wherever they can. So when we think about organizations like Bell Helicopter or Caterpillar, or those are great partners of us that bring their staff and members. So volunteer. Talent, we rely heavily, again, on volunteers, but they are our talent pool to helping us solve complex issues. And then treasure. It takes money to do this. And so when we think about our model, we are incredibly efficient, 99.4% efficiency rate. For every $1 that is donated, we're able to rescue $30 of food. Time, talent, and treasure.
What percentage of the money that is donated to Midwest Food Bank actually goes back into Midwest Food Bank? Because I think a lot of people ask that question when they donate money. Yeah, so our efficiency model with GuideStar is 99.4. So for every $1, 99.4 is going out into the community, back into the community. That's huge
Yeah.
when you're making a donation somewhere, because then you put it into perspective and think, okay, people are really going to feel, even if I donate a small amount, still the bulk of that is going back into the community and helping my neighbors.
That's right. No small amount is not, how do I say this? Every day I get to see a front row seat of this miraculous multiplication. And just yesterday, when I opened up the warehouse, there was a box of 10 foods, and I took a picture of it. I stepped back, and I do that because I need to remind myself we're operating at scale. Mm-hmm. But just to remind myself that there is going to feed somebody today, and that's going to be the difference between their destiny being changed, possibly for their life and possibly for generations to come.
All right. Will you stick around so we can talk more about Midwest Food Bank?
Sure will.
All right. Gareth Keown will be right back with me in just a moment. We're back with Gareth Keown to talk more about Midwest Food Bank. And Gareth, if you will, talk to us about food insecurity and how there is no discrimination, if you will.
Yeah, I got to confess, I was guilty of this prior to coming into the food bank sector. When you think about food insecurity, sometimes there's this image that it's somebody that doesn't have a job or possibly doesn't want to have a job, mental health issues, and so on. But the reality is that food insecurity does not discriminate. Today, 1 in 4 children, 1 in 5 children in Texas are food insecure. So whether it be children, whether it be senior citizens, whether it be single parents or veterans, these are the demographic that face food insecurity. To put some context to that, or maybe some hard handles to that, there's a report out called the ALICE report. ALICE stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. And this report really changed my paradigm on the subject. When we look at the federal poverty line, and then we look at above that to look at what's the minimum surviving budget for a family of 4 in Texas, that moved from $75,000 a year to now $78,000. So when we looked at that into perspective of the total population, that's roughly 43% of our population that is on that cusp.
Almost half.
Almost half. So what are the drivers? Well, there's macro drivers like the economy, mm-hmm. policy, and such like that. But I think if we were just to pause there and to just allow that to sink in, to realize that food insecurity is complex, it doesn't discriminate, and the reality is that the working poor today are impacted more so by food insecurity.
And you mentioned a little bit about kids going to school, and perhaps the food that they get in the cafeteria is the only food they'll get for that day, which could just be breakfast and lunch. But what a lot of people don't think about is going into the weekend. What do those kids eat during the weekend? How can we help?
Yeah. So the weekend, and then also summer, if you think about summer. I'll give you two illustrations that might add color to that. So several months ago, I had the school district in Keller, the football coach, to the coach and the assistant coach, 2 burly men, sobbing about the reality that they have upwards of 800 kids in their various field and programs, that their only meal is that 1 meal a day. When we look at our model and working with food pantries, we're specifically working with agencies that are focused in schools, mm-hmm. and they're providing these meals for after school care programs, and then the weekend, also known as the backpack programs. That to me has been shocking to see the reality of how many kids today are both food insecure but also homeless. There's a school district in the Holtom City area. More than 120 middle to high school kids that are sleeping in their cars on campus because they have nowhere else to go. And let's just step back. We're in the second largest GDP in the country.
Yeah.
We have the resources. So something's failing, and that's what we're doing to work with it. We're identifying the need, we're connecting resources with organizations that are working in schools, and by God's grace, we're seeing movement.
Are you seeing a big difference personally? I mean, can you give us a couple of stories, for example, that you've witnessed yourself in helping people overcome?
Yeah, I think one of the stories that come to mind was a single mom who recently got diagnosed with cancer. She had 4 kids, and she had to find a solution, and her sister was the only option. And her sister came into the food bank, and just to reiterate, our model is we provide food to food pantries, not necessarily to individuals.
Right.
But she came into our warehouse, and we were just led to help her, to make this exception to help her. You never know what the impact is, right? So fast forward several weeks back of that providing that constant food. She was able to absorb those kids into her care because she was a single mom. She didn't have the resources. Mm-hmm. And just for that 4 weeks, that additional hope that was provided, that was the difference that helped set her sister on a track of recovery and being able to engage in the necessary program that she had to through the hospital. And we've seen tremendous outcome from that.
What does that do for you inside? I mean, to know that what you're doing basically was a matter of life and death, because if someone's going through cancer treatment, they need to be for themselves in the right mindset to get through that treatment because it's hard. But she's a single mom and she's raising these kids. And what you have done and what your organization has done is given her the hope and the belief that something good will come out of all of this.
I couldn't have said it any better than what you've just you've laid out that reality. So as I think of myself personally, I have been incredibly fortunate to come to this nation as an immigrant. And in some small way, if there's any way that I can give back, because I've received way more than I've given, it's moments like that put fuel in the tank for me personally. And then as an organization, it comes back to our why. Our mission is to alleviate food insecurity, to share the love of Christ in doing that. And we do that without discrimination. And we do that on a daily basis. And it's stories like that are multiplied in the hundreds of thousands per month.
Where do you see Midwest Food Bank going from here? I mean, you've got a huge operation to begin with, but do you want it to grow even beyond?
Yeah, that's a tricky question, because if we grow, that says that the problem is still there. In an ideal world, Kelly, I'd love to be out of business. I'd love to not be in this having to deal with this, but that's not the world we live in. And so going forward for Texas, we're continuing to grow in the DFW area. We've almost doubled our size in the last 2 years. We have operations in Oklahoma. So when we think about eastern rural Oklahoma, we think about Louisiana. Those are 2 states that continue to grow in need. Mm-hmm. But I think for us, as we keep pace with the food insecurity, we'll continue to broaden our network in the state of Texas, probably towards the south, and then deepen those relationships with those organizations that, again, from a program geography and demographic focus is really what we are. When we look at food insecurity, the four demographics that represent the largest population of those that are food insecure are children, senior citizens, single parents, and veterans. And so those are our focus points for 25 and beyond.
So if folks want to help, I mean, you mentioned they can donate money, but you also need volunteers. How do they go about doing that? Yeah,
so in the old Texas way, all y'all come.
All y'all? I love it.
You can go to midwestfoodbank.org/Texas. That'll take you to our landing page. And from there, you can sign up, whether you're an individual or your company, you can sign up to come volunteer with us. We're open Monday through Friday There are some weekends that are available for volunteer opportunities. And, when people come, they obviously are helping somebody else. But the impact to them when they leave is so much more greater.
Yeah, it truly is. So y'all all come.
Y'all come.
All y'all come.
Yeah.
Gareth Keown, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it with Midwest Food Bank. We'll be right back. Thanks for joining me today for BizTV's Create, Build, Manage.
Episodes of Create, Build, Manage are available on demand on the free BizTV streaming app. Visit watch.biztv.com and get BizTV programming anytime, anywhere.
Stay tuned to BizTV for more stories that educate, enlighten, and empower.